Welcome to a football show Monday edition. That is Zach Lyons, and I am Braden Gall, and happy to be here with you guys. I was about to wish my Tennessee Volunteers congratulations a little too early, a little too prematurely, but I very rarely wear the gear. But it's a big championship Monday for not just, of course, college baseball, but NHL hockey as well. Game 7. Lots of stuff to do today on the show. We're going to talk Colts. We're going to talk about the media and the frustration that Titans fans have around the Colts and the media. Zach was tweeting about it wonderfully, by the way, as usual. And of course, then we'll get into our matchups, which we've done for Houston and Jacksonville. If you missed those 2 episodes, please go check out those episodes on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We are, of course, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. Look at all you folks live in the comments already. We got Bo and Glory Day and J-Rock. Good to see all you guys. Yeah, Bo, listen, I'm sorry. Listen, Bo's a huge Aggies fan, but he listens to a lot of the show, so we appreciate your support. Always grateful to have you here, but go Vols, baby. Go Vols. I want my 7-year-old to go to bed happy tonight. Okay, Zach, how are you, sir? How was your weekend?
Doing good. I was watching the Tennessee Volunteer baseball games, and can't remember what inning it actually was, but I go, if basically it's probably right the full inning after the home run. I said to a couple of chats, I was like, if the offense for the Aggies does not pull away and create some breathing room, they're losing this game. Yeah. And sure enough, they played it too close because they were terrible in one-score games, and the University of Tennessee are great in one-score games. And so it's just a matter of time before those Tennessee bats get hot and actually yield results, because they were hot the whole game, but they didn't yield any results. But college baseball actually a lot more fun than regular baseball.
0 for 16 with runners on base up until the home run by Dylan Deerling, of course, in the 7th inning. And then Cal Stark 0 for 15 at the plate for the entire World Series when he decided to hit a home run out of the 9-hole. Sorry, Bo, we're not going to relive all of this. I just think we're in for a great sports night, just a generally great sports night. Winner take all.
The presidential debate tonight too. Like
no,
there's like 3
Thursday
big.
Night.
Oh, is it Thursday night?
Thursday
Did they move it?
It's Thursday night.
I thought someone said Monday.
It's a 2 TV kind of night, though, man. Like you like the baseball game will start at 6:30, and will probably end after the hockey game, which starts at 7:30. Like, because those baseball games run forever. But you know what? The games have been awesome. The games have been fun. The stress and the tension in my household. Like, my wife got up and was like, "I need to start drinking," and I was like, "Just Uber Eats Sinkers Beverages, baby. Like, just type in the app and they'll deliver the booze right to your house, Zach. You know?
Hey, they drive so you can drink."
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. No, seriously, like, she doesn't normally get up in sporting events that stressed out, and was just like, "No, I need to." She's like, "I think I need a drink. What should I have?" And sure enough, we made some cocktails. We're working on some gin drinks, much to honor good friend of the pod, Stoney Keeley. I've not been a gin guy most of my life. We've been doing a lot of gin in the summertime. It's very hot. It's nice, refreshing. Some French 75, some gin gimlets. It's very good stuff, and you can get all the necessary equipment there, of course, at Sinkers Beverages. Make sure you check them out. Follow the In Crowd, of course, and sign up for the In Crowd. You get all kinds of great stuff. On Friday, I walked in because I'm in the crowd. I got a little newsletter. I walked in on Friday. I got a Blanton's bottle of gold Blanton's bourbon because I've never had one before. I've had plenty of Blanton's, but never a bottle of the gold. And they had them out there because they do their allocations every now and then. So they put out you follow them on the socials and make sure you're in the In Crowd. You'll get updates on when they're dropping that kind of stuff. And I was just like, oh, okay, I'll head up there and grab one, please. Thank you. Kingston Group, of course, buildkg.com. If you have any needs for your house, buying, selling, remodeling, renovating, whatever you're doing, make sure you talk to the Kingston Group first. They are great people here, locally owned, award-winning, nose-to-tail firm, and they'll take care of you guys here in Nashville if you're doing anything with your house. So don't buy or sell until you get that. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk Colts, and we're going to talk matchups between the Titans and the Colts, and we're going to have a great time doing it, and we're going to discuss the media and how frustrating it is. But can I do one more bit of self-promotion, Zach? Just one more bit, because stackingtheinbox.com, fantastic Substack for you to follow if you're a Tennessee Titans fan. One of the things in this market that is clearly missing is a dedicated community to Nashville Predators fans. So 440 Media excited to announce today Lower Broad Hockey. Go to Substack, search Lower Broad Hockey. You can get to them on the Twitters and the Instagram as well. It's going to be a premium subscription service for Nashville Predators fans. We are going to cater and dedicate ourselves to diehard Nashville Predators fans, but also we want to make sure folks who are not the deep in the weeds Corsi Score data analytics guys, that just love the team and are smart and want to follow the team, we're going to have good content for folks like you as well. So come over, subscribe. It's myself, Michael Gallagher, Emma Lingen. And if you are a founding member, we will probably give you some intel because we're going to make another big hire in September. It's going to be a big name, and you Predators fans are going to want this information. I promise you. Subscriber group chats, controlled content, merchandise, in-person events, videos, podcasts, feature stories, prospect information, everything you could need to be the most informed Preds fan anywhere on the community. But we need support from folks like you. So if you're a big diehard Preds fan or just a casual Preds fan, we've got you covered. Head on over to Lower Broad Hockey over on Substack. So there you go. Thank you.
I would encourage you, though, when you are advertising this in the future, make sure to breathe at some point or slow down Emma Lingen, because you go Malingen. And I mean, you just said it so Malingen. And so I don't know what a Malingen is, but let's make sure that Emma Lingen.
Good. That's a good point. Thank you for the constructive criticism. Emma Lingen formerly worked inside the building, has insight inside of the Preds organization, and is now working with us. She's on the Gold Standard podcast, of course, and now at Lower Broad Hockey. So Lower Broad Hockey on Substack. Emma Lingen, Michael Gallagher, and myself, and a head writer coming in September are going to be awesome. So I promise you guys are going to want that. So come on. Yes, exactly. Emma knows where the bodies are buried. And the only way you can find...
Emma knows where the bodies are buried.
So I said it too fast and Stoney can't spell. I love it. We're off and running here. But she does. She has a lot of insight into the organization. When you've worked inside of a team, you have perspective that nobody else has. And the only way you can get that sort of off the record gossip, you got to be a part of the community. That group chat's going to be big time. I think that thing's going to be pretty fired up. No cap, as they say. All right. So take us through your... I have an interesting perspective. I had a few interesting conversations this summer about the interest in the Indianapolis Colts. And I still think the Colts have the largest fan base of any team in the AFC South. I think they have the largest following and therefore are going to get the most stories and clicks and attention. They also have a premier high pick quarterback that's very controversial is not the right word, Zach, but just sort of he's a question mark. We don't know. There's a lot of intrigue in what Anthony Richardson's going to be. The Houston Texans are the big story in the division these days, but it does appear that folks are still misevaluating the coverage of the Indianapolis Colts. Is that what you're suggesting on Twitter these days?
Well, it's not that I have a problem with saying that if Anthony Richardson were to stay healthy or to be who people expected for him to reach his ceiling and potential this season, that it couldn't change the AFC in its entirety, like the first part of the tweet says by Dan Orlovsky. It's the second part where he talks about he's under the radar. Though that's not no. First off, he's like ranked 3 on ESPN's fantasy quarterback projected rankings, the place that Dan Orlovsky works. Everybody has talked about Anthony Richardson. Like, that is not an under-the-radar pick. An under-the-radar pick would be, or even a bold one would be saying, well, if Will Levis, does that, or if Drake May does it, or JJ McCarthy, or this or that. There's about 13 other under-the-radar quarterbacks that could flip the entire NFL or everybody's entire perception of the NFL on its head. Anthony Richardson isn't one of them, because we saw the Colts kind of be competitive with Gardner Minshew, even though Gardner Minshew is now gone. But like that is my problem. And here's the thing. If they didn't say that about every Colts quarterback every year, maybe I wouldn't have an issue with it this one time, but every year when they got Matt Ryan, when they got Phillip Rivers, when, even Jacoby Brissett got a lot of love because the Colts.
They put Carson Wentz on Hard Knocks.
Yeah. Jim Irsay. I mean, I don't know what he's paying these people. I know he pays the Colts local media a lot. I know they're in his pocket.
Oh, wow.
1,000% convinced of that. There's no way that anybody could ever tell me otherwise.
I would take a check
ridiculous.
I would take a check from Amy Adams Strunk if she wants to pay me. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, like, who wouldn't? I mean, I don't blame them for taking it, but let's call it like it is, and that it does not matter who the Colts quarterbacks could have been Mac Jones. Let's say this scenario played out. Anthony Richardson injures himself in the offseason. He's lost for the season. And instead of the Jaguars trading for Mac Jones, they trade for Mac Jones. Well, my God, Mac Jones would have probably been talked about more than Will Levis, because that's just how the Indianapolis Colts media machine works. Doesn't matter if they're not really the hot team. The national media guys cannot help themselves to fall all over themselves to talk about the Colts. It just doesn't matter. They just love talking about the Colts.
Yeah, I don't like Trevor. Like, this is what's crazy about this conversation. Trevor Lawrence is the undervalued fantasy prospect this year. If you were going to pick one in the division, Will Levis is the undervalued fantasy prospect at quarterback. If you're going to pick one in the division,
Anthony Richardson has now turned overvalued.
Yes. Like, I really like Anthony Richardson from a fantasy perspective. If we're just talking fantasy, like, hey, is it worth the risk to take Anthony Richardson again, I'm thinking in a one quarterback league, maybe in like the sixth or seventh round, wherever the top quarterbacks start to go. I'm in a 2 quarterback system league, so I'm skewed. So I'm trying to kind of guess here. But if he's going like 6th or 7th and you're willing to take that risk as a top 3 to 5 quarterback off the board, because you can come back and get like a really good quality backup as an early pick later on, because that's how you can easily win a fantasy league. Well, that's incredible, but you're going to have to draft him in the first few rounds. Yahoo Sports, and I'm not saying ESPN or Yahoo's right or wrong here, but I go check my baseball lineups every now and then. And a couple of weeks ago, the question on the headline on the head page of Yahoo was like, "Is Anthony Richardson QB1?" ? You can't really be under the radar.
Guy who's never finished a season.
You can't be under.
That's insane.
But again, we can debate how good he will or won't be, or how good the marriage is with the scheme or with Sirianni, or like or whatever. Or did I get that right? No, Shane Steichen. I got the name wrong. If like those are really smart, interesting discussions about what the future of the Colts organization will be with Anthony Richardson. But you can't, by definition, a player cannot be under the radar where the experts for fantasy sports, which is a massive industry, a $1 billion industry, if those experts have him ranked as like a top 5 player at his position, it's just factually untrue.
He's 9th in MVP odds, Braden.
Okay, that would be I would say that's an under the radar bet for MVP, but just that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that means that he's not under the radar in, again, the national media eyes. It's not just fantasy. Mina Kimes, Dan Orlovsky. I could probably, basically all the ESPN talking heads. Then you got guys over on Fox Sports doing the same, Emmanuel Ocho, which really we should all know by now that if Emmanuel Ocho says anything, then everybody is wrong. Because if he agrees with something, you might as well just back off and be like, I got to shift gears here. Because if he says it, we're totally wrong. And this is something we run into every year. But it really, and we do talk about it on Football and Other Efforts every year, the Colts media hype. And it happens. But now it's not really that they're really hyping up the Colts per se. They're really just hyping up Anthony Richardson, a guy who has never finished an entire season in his career starting back to high school. Like, this guy cannot stay healthy. He's having trouble in camp, and everybody seems to just wash it away because he's in a Colts uniform. Like, I don't know if they would do that and I think a part of this is draft bias too, which we have talked about ad nauseum. But I don't know, like, if Anthony Richardson had gone, what's a good small market team? Not that really the Tennessee.
Carolina. Okay. What if Carolina had taken him?
If he would have been here at the Tennessee Titans and had the same start to his season last year that he had with the Titans, he only played like 4 games or 5 games, whatever he played, right? And he came over here, they would all hate Anthony Richardson. And if Will Levis was at the Colts and had the same season with the Colts they had with the Titans, they would all still love the Colts because it's really just the Colts. So, I mean, everyone is talking about the Colts. I mean, it is overhyped by the standards of the team, in my opinion. And I think it's because they're that team that kind of surprised people last year. They went 9-8.
Backup quarterback.
And they're expecting them to build upon that. But this really reminds me of the Jacksonville Jaguars after they made it into the playoffs. They went 9-8, made it into the playoffs, and then they make moves that don't improve the team exponentially. Yep. They make moves like they're an 11-5, 11-6 team, and this reeks right now because of all the hype surrounding them. This reeks of a last place team.
They
And that's
invest.
just because how sometimes that works.
The Texans went out and got pieces. The Jags went out and got a couple pieces, but the Colts reinvested in their own pieces, which sometimes is very, very smart. But to your point, I like now if you're a Colts fan, and I'm not suggesting this is correct or whatever, I'm just saying if you're the fan, you're sort of looking at Richardson as sort of a new piece, right? Because, hey, we went 9 games with Gardner Minshew. Well, Richardson didn't play that many games. He's coming back now. He should be fully healthy, and we're looking forward to having him. Excuse me. I think investing in Pittman, for example, great idea. I think that's a really good piece. He's a really good player. But there's a lot of young pieces that are on the 2 deep, in particular rookies, and maybe not highly drafted rookies, that are all over the offense and the defense. So I think they're starting 22. In particular, I'm really interested in their defense. There's some high-level skill on the Colts, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of depth here. And so I think if you are Anthony Richardson injury away from being an average team, although they do have Joe Flacco, which again, I don't know if he can replicate what he did last year behind that offensive line with that running game. I don't know. It seems statistically improbable, Zach, that Joe Flacco could replicate what he did last year. I thought Gardner Minshew did fine. I thought he did fine in his role as a backup. I don't think you can ask more of that from a backup quarterback than what he delivered.
But also him and Anthony Richardson are similar style of play, more so than anything that Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson, you couldn't have. I don't think there is a more 1-2 quarterback 1, quarterback 2 discrepancy in play style in the NFL right now than Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. This is like Vince Young and Kerry Collins, right? Like this is what this is. 2 diametrically opposed forces at one position. It's just it's wild.
So I know we've done this a lot, so I don't want to belabor the point and spend any time on this, but I do want to just point out, like, if the Dallas Cowboys are 3-13 or 3-14, they're still going to get just as much coverage in the offseason because they get a lot of clicks and they have big fan bases. And the Colts have by far the biggest fan base and the largest, longest standing brand in the AFC South. And it just is what it is. I don't think we have to talk about it anymore because I think Titans fans understand it. It doesn't mean you don't get pissed off when you see extra coverage of a mediocre Colts team, but it just sort of is what it is. Like, you just can't, like, if my team's the Packers, and if they're mediocre, they're going to get a shit ton of coverage because they have a huge fan base and they're really, really freaking old. And so that just sort of is what it is. You can't let it bother you. But when somebody says, and Dan Orlovsky's fine, I think he does his job all right. But if he goes, this guy is super under the radar, no one's talking about him, well, it's just like factually not true. So yeah. I think
it's ridiculous.
Like, so that's our one off-season rant about the Colts. There you go. There you have it. All right. So let's get into the actual. So first of all, I kind of asked. I had a sort of an overwhelming takeaway from the Jags. I had sort of an overwhelming takeaway from this exercise when I talked to the Tech when we had a conversation about the Texans. I'm struggling to find the main overarching takeaway because it's such a giant question mark for me. Because of the quarterback situation, I could see this team being extremely dangerous. I could see them falling on their face. The defense, for example, 28th in points per game, 24th in yards per play or yards per game last year. So not great statistically, but also really great at getting to the quarterback and stopping the run. So, like, I don't even know what to make of that. So do you have any overarching takeaways from the Colts when you began this exercise?
I just don't. I don't get the idea of staying re-upping the same people that yield you mediocre results. Like, I get trying to run it back if you're a team like the Titans, right? I understood in hindsight running it back really hurt the team. But you understood why they were bringing back signing Ryan Tannehill to an extension, why they were bringing back Derrick Henry, why they were bringing back Harold Landry and signing Jared. You understood. Whether you agree with the strategy or not, you understood running it back. I don't understand running it back with this particular set of this particular team. They're kind of like the Titans for me in a sense of I don't like their depth at a lot of places. And I feel like they probably have a similar situation where if their young quarterback goes down, it changes the entire dynamic of the team. Even though I do think Mason Rudolph is likely more serviceable over like a 10-game span than Joe Flacco is over a 10-game span. And that's mainly due to age and wear and tear, not necessarily skill level.
Would you take Flacco if it was like 1 or 2 games?
Yeah. That's kind of how I would feel, is like I'll take Flacco for 1 or 2 games. And I don't like the team. And I think they're very suspect in crucial places in today's NFL. And they're really, really relying on DeForest Buckner. Like, that seems to be if DeForest Buckner goes down with injury, that changes the whole dynamic of this entire defense. Whereas if Jeffrey Simmons goes down, like, that's bad. But also you have all these corners, right? You still have premier proven edge players that can stay healthy and produce. You still have the 3 top corners in this division. And again, they'll have the advantage in this one as well. And I think that this defense is it's just really not great. I think that after you get past DeForest Buckner and Kenny Moore, you could maybe include Julian Blackmon in this. But really, when you talk about, those guys, remember how we did that exercise with the Tennessee Titans, and like, you only had like really Jeffrey Simmons on defense and Harold Landry. These are the guys.
Who's the dude?
The dudes.
Yeah.
I feel like they only have 2 dudes on defense. And when you go to offense, I think they have more, but they're all on the offensive line. Like, dudes are really all on the offensive line. Now, I think you can make a case for Josh Downs as an ascending dude. I think when Jonathan Taylor is healthy, he's a dude. And Michael Pittman has shown to be a dude inconsistently.
He has dude-like tendencies.
Yeah, dude-like tendencies. But I'm just not. I think that the Tennessee Titans are a better team for as long as the quarterbacks stay healthy. Like, if Will Levis goes down, but Anthony Richardson stays healthy, or if Anthony Richardson goes down, Will Levis stays healthy, that's obviously the tiebreaker in those situations. But really, I mean, I'm looking at it, and there's not a lot to like about the Colts, and that's because of how they approach the offseason.
So I agree with your point that I don't love that they address the offseason. And really, it's interesting because they were very young at certain positions last year, in particular at corner, and they're just sort of buying into letting those guys develop. So I'm okay with like, hey, our plan is going to be to develop our own guys. You're going to have to take some major steps forward in certain positions. Now, again, 11th in yards per carry on rushing defense. Not great, not top 10. 5th in sacks. So I do think that they're a little bit better at getting to the quarterback than maybe you're giving them credit for. I don't think Kwity Paye or Grover Stewart are like dudes, but I think Kwity Paye is a pretty solid player. I do think their safeties are very good. I think the corners are young, but not, they lose, of course. Is it Shaquille Leonard now? Is that right? Is that what we're supposed to call him? Shaquille Leonard?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not really been a factor for multiple years, but he's now out of there officially. They really don't have a lot of depth. This is my issue here. And Stoney said this as well. The defensive depth chart would scare me. If they stay healthy, I think this is a very talented football team. But they have like 4 rookies projected as backups right now on their 2 deep. And like, I think only one of them, Latu, at a UCLA, was a high draft pick. So and he's a guy that we talked about with injury history, and we're not sure like what he's going to be on the next level. So,
and he's going again. And I like to bring this up. Him and Anthony Richardson. Anybody with an injury history is going to the worst stadium where you play on at least a minimum of 8 games every season. One of the worst stadiums outside of MetLife to play on if you have injury history.
I think it's an important point, especially if you're the quarterback, where everyone's trying to take you down, and you're a quarterback who likes to run a lot. I think it's certainly the case. I agree with you about DeForest Buckner. I do think their high-end talent on offense, if it's all healthy, could be very and the system has to work and Richardson has to stay healthy. But I do think the high-end talent on offense is pretty impressive. I defensively is where I got major questions. So let's dive into the matchup where we know the Titans are going to win most of the matchups. And that is going to be receiving core against the Colts cornerbacks. And I'm not sure.
They're going to eat them alive.
I'm not sure we have to talk a lot about this. Like,
yeah. It's a pathetic group, and I like Julius Brents, who's going by Juju. And let me say this, whenever you do a name change, it never works out. And we barely saw Juju Brents on the, make some big plays or anything. And then the other cornerback is Jalen Jones. Kenny Moore is a really good nickel. And I do appreciate, he's like the Tyler Boyd of nickels. He's a veteran that just knows what to do.
Yeah.
So he's not flashy. I don't think he's as elite as what everybody makes him out to be, because a lot of people just were like, love some Kenny Moore.
Is he better than Desmond King?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, there's not a doubt in my mind. But the outside corners are pretty terrible. I don't like Julius Brents, don't like Jalen Jones right now, and I don't like the matchup that they have to go up against. And then behind them is Dallas Flowers and Jalen Simpson. I guess they're moving to corner, which makes no sense to me, but we'll see how that actually all works out in the end. They are atrocious behind them, though. Like, there is just no, like you said, there's no depth. It's just a pretty bad matchup, and to me, the Tennessee Titans wide receivers definitely have the edge.
Yep, completely agree. All right, so then let's flip sides, and I think this is a pretty good matchup. I lean Tennessee, but I think it's a very good matchup, which is Michael Pittman as their number one receiver. You got Josh Downs as their sort of slot speed guy that can do a lot of stuff. I don't love A.D. Mitchell being put into the starting lineup right away.
I don't think he's going to be. I know our lads is the depth chart I'm looking at, and they have him ahead of Alec Pierce, but I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Alec Pierce has had some nice games. He's a professional, so I think he might be
especially against Christian Fulton.
Yeah, yes. Well, as one does. I do like the Anthony Gold pick late. I don't think he's going to be a contributor, but I really like that player out of Oregon State. But point is you go Pittman and Downs, and then you add in a high level draft pick with Mitchell, talent wise, with Pierce, and there's stuff to like there. Do I think the Titans match up well with it? Yes, I think Snead is a very good matchup for Michael Pittman. Do I love Awuzie against Downs, or do I love McCreary against Downs at the line of scrimmage? Yes. In the open field, no. So I think they're sort of like, depending on if you can hold him up at the line of scrimmage and McCreary wins that battle, then I think McCreary can do some damage against Downs. But Downs has also torched this team, even just in one season. Like he had some big games against them last year, and that was I think that was Minshew that actually found him a lot in that matchup in Indianapolis.
Yeah,
so,
Downs ate him alive. But he took all three corners down. But that's also because they play off ball, and I think that's, again, it's kind of the same with those smaller guys like Zay Flowers, like Tank Dell. You press them up against the line, it's a little bit different. And the Colts are a lot of timing routes as well, so it's about, if you can disrupt the timing routes, I think that's really good for them. I look at it and I think, okay, whose receiving core would I like to have over the next 4 years? Probably the Colts.
Yep.
Who, as of right now, who do I think is better in 2024? Obviously, it would be the Tennessee Titans. But in the case of what I'm looking at is like Michael Pittman Jr., not really a speedy man guy. So L'Jarius Sneed or Cheeto, one of those guys on him is going to be fine. Josh Downs is where you have maybe the bigger issue with, but again, if you jam them up at the line, and to me, A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce kind of do have the same upside as far as like, yes, Alec Pierce is heading into year 3, but really A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce are probably got the same scary level to them, threat level to them. So I'm not too concerned. And I think that when you really look at the top 3, whether it's A.D. Mitchell or Alec Pierce, right? It doesn't matter which one. It doesn't move the needle for me either way. I think when you take the top 3 corners and the top 3 wide receivers, top 3 for the Colts and wide receiver, and the top 3 for the Titans at corner, the Titans win. Now, if you have to get into depth stuff, then maybe I would take, A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce against the fourth corner. But again, Anthony Gold, like you said, I put him as a kick returner guy. That's why they drafted him.
Yeah.
They didn't draft him to be a wide receiver. They drafted him to be a kick returner.
No, and I think honestly, like 1 through 4, I think it's a solid collection of guys that sort of does a little bit different things. And although I could see Mitchell being a similar player to Pittman, and that's not necessarily what you want, but I think Awuzie on the other side has an opportunity to win a lot of battles with Pierce or Mitchell for now. I do think if Mitchell figures it out, which is not something that you and I sort of projected him to do, but if he does figure it out, then this receiving core becomes really dynamic with 3 guys. And to your point, I agree with you. 3 years from now, do I want this receiving core over the Titans? Probably, but who knows? We'll see. I do think they match up very well, and this is not a new thing. It's not earth shattering here, but the Titans corners and receivers are going to match up pretty well with everybody they play, and that's just going to be. That's why we started there. The question is going to be how many times do they match up with the team where you feel comfortable with them winning consistently along the line of scrimmage. And that's where we're going next. And I think there's more of a chance for the Titans to win along the line of scrimmage on offense. But if Sweat and Simmons turn into this 2-headed monster in the middle, then I think they match up well with the interior of the Colts offensive line. But that's a big if, because the guys on the Colts offensive line are established. And so, it's hard for me on paper to pick the Titans defensive front to beat the Colts offensive front. Maybe Harold Landry can find some success. And I think Simmons and Sweat can hold their own. But I think there's just not many teams where you're going to put down on paper and be like, yep, they're going to dominate the Colts offensive line. They had a big bounce back year last year.
Let me say this. Not that I think that it's a domination or anything. Braden Smith had knee surgery, the starting right tackle. Blake Freeland is the backup. He's not very good. Bernard Raymond is their left tackle, and he's not very good, and he struggled mightily. Now, Quentin Nelson is good, but we've seen Jeffrey Simmons routinely kind of take Quentin Nelson to the shed. I like Ryan Kelly, but he's getting up on the wrong side of that age limit right there. And then I just don't like Will Fries. I mean, and Tanner Bortolini. Let me tell you something. Devondre Sweat will shove Tanner Bortolini out the stadium, and so will Jeffrey Simmons, because he's a weak motherfucker. I don't like Tanner Bortolini at all.
It's the rookie.
So again, you get into injury issues, right? Like you get into these injury issues. They are terrible in the depth. Their right guard isn't that great. I do think that while it's not a domination, I think that out of all the offensive, this is going to sound really weird, but out of all the offensive lines that the Tennessee Titans face in this division, this is the one they're most favorable matchup.
Really?
Because I do, yeah. And I just don't think that, I just think that there's going to be something to, and it kind of feeds into the way that the corners are going to play. And maybe that kind of feeds into the advantage that I kind of see the Tennessee Titans having. But I do think that Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat and Sebastian Joseph Day can really make life easier combined with the corners for the edge guys to attack Bernard Raymond. I think that attacking Bernard Raymond and Braden Smith, I don't like their tackles at all.
But they're still
think
better
that
than,
maybe is the big thing.
Do you not think they're better than Jacksonville, though? I still think they're better than Jacksonville.
No, because where the Jacksonville's the weakest isn't their tackles. And I think tackles are the most important part of protecting the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. And they still have, a good center in Mitch Morse. They still have a left. I'm not really crazy about their guards. But at the end of the day, they have two really good left and right tackles, whereas I think these are the worst left tackle. This is as a whole, as a combo, the Titans have the worst right tackle situation, right? I think they, in theory, have the worst right tackle situation. But their combo of whatever they're going to do, combined with Bill Callahan against Bernard Raymond and Braden Smith, I feel like this is the worst tackle combo in the league, and that helps, or not in the league, in the AFC South, and that helps, this whole scenario. Do I think that maybe life will be harder up front, and maybe that's where the majority of their runs are going to come through if you're talking about run blocking? Yeah, I could kind of see that problem. But at the end of the day, I think the offensive line just really caught lightning in a bottle last year for this Indianapolis Colts team.
That's possible. So Stoney says, I'm taking the Jags tackles 8 days a week. I agree with the tackles part of this. If you're going left to right, all 5 guys, Houston is number 1 in the division. I would have the Colts slightly ahead of Jacksonville at 2 and 3, and then the Titans at 4. But by the end of the year, if Mitch Morse is really good, then obviously maybe Jacksonville's number 2. If Latham is really good and Bill Callahan does work on the right, then maybe you could argue all 3 of these teams are about the same. So I think that it's hard to argue Houston at number 1. And then my order would be Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Tennessee in that order. But there's not a lot of separation between 2, 3, and 4, in my opinion. So
I just think this is a favorable match. This is the most favorable matchup for the defensive front the Titans will face against a division with really strong offensive lines in certain spots. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, like,
okay.
yes.
Yep. It's strength.
I agree with what you're
strength.
saying. I agree with what you're saying is that the Colts are probably the second best offensive line.
Yep.
But the strengths and the weaknesses of the defensive front versus the offensive line, I think, does favor Tennessee Titans by a small margin.
I think I agree. Like if you're going strength on strength, which is interior and interior for both Titans and Colts, and then you allow Landry to sort of go off because he can have those games where he is a premier pass rusher. And Arden Key has an opportunity to win some matchups where he normally doesn't win matchups, then I agree that you can look at the matchup and say this one favors Tennessee because of where the strength lies, where you're not going to get much pressure on Jacksonville, right? But then Sweat and Simmons can push up the middle, and maybe that's where they win those battles. But again, if Mitch Morse is very good for Jacksonville, that maybe changes the dynamic along their offensive line. Let's go the other side. I find this one to be hard. I still lean Colts on this one because I think DeForest Buckner is maybe the best and most proven player here. Kwity Paye and Grover Stewart. You've got Ebukam and then Oyedingabo, I believe is how you say his last name, Dio, on the backup there. Then you got Latu. There is some talent on this front seven. A lot of it's unproven, and a lot of it is injury prone. And so I would lean, because almost no team I'm going to automatically pick the Titans offensive line to win the battle. But again, should things develop the right way, could I see the Titans winning these battles by the end of the year? Absolutely. But right now, I think I have to lean slight edge Colts defensive line, pass rush, and run stuffing for now. But I'm willing to be convinced otherwise.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats from last year, right? And
5th in sacks.
Now we got it. Here's the thing. That's great for all the other, for the 4th place schedule that or 3rd place, whatever it was last year. That's great. Now I will say this: with the second meeting the Tennessee Titans faced the Indianapolis Colts in Week 13, according to PFF, who counts one sack as a half sack as one sack, they got 8 sacks. In the first meeting, they only got 1 sack. And I think we all know that as the year went on, the offensive line got worse.
Yep.
I would look at it and say, I don't think you're going to expect a guy. Look, Derek Johnson had a sack, or Eric Johnson had a sack. Jacob Martin, Deo Odeniigbo had a sack. Kwity Paye had 2, and Samson Ekabon had 2, and DeForest Buckner had 1. Now, some of those are going to be half sacks. I don't think they all, there's probably like 3 or 4 half sacks in there or something.
Right.
But I mean, they also had they had 16 hurries, and then 8 sacks in addition. So I feel like that's a little bit unsustainable there. So like, I don't think that. I look at it and I go, I think a 1 sack, 2 sack defensive line is what you really got in front of you. I don't really believe in, Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye is a guy for me that I just don't see it. Again, he had 8 sacks total on the whole year. Now, this is, again, half sacks on PFF and all that kind of stuff. And just 28 total pressures. I just don't see it with Kwity Paye. He has health issues on his own as well.
I mean, there's a reason they drafted Latu. I think he's like I think he has a ceiling, and I think he sort of reached his ceiling, and that's like solid.
He's like Arden Key.
Great. Yeah, that's
right?
literally was in my head.
That's your number 1 edge rusher. Like I said, it all comes down to it comes down to DeForest Buckner. And I like Buckner. But I look at Buckner and I go, that's if you kind of stop him, you kind of stop this defense. And I think that's I'm with you. Like, start of the season, I give it to the Colts to, slightly, just ever so slightly, but it's going to be pretty easy to see why the Tennessee Titans would win out in the end in this battle. And I think it's going to end up that way because I think Lloyd Cushenberry can help a lot with DeForest Buckner. You know what I'm saying? Like, that guy can probably help out more.
I would hope. $50 million, that's the job.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I'm saying is, that's better than Aaron Brewer.
Yeah, oh yeah, because they got. I mean, now I guess this was the other side of the ball.
That's a terrible matchup. DeForest Buckner and Aaron Brewer is a terrible matchup.
And last year was the other side of the ball. But last year, the Titans' front line got completely demoralized by the offensive line for the Colts. So I just was thinking, I just kept seeing Zach Moss like go untouched into the backfield.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. Like, Pay has a high floor, but a low ceiling. I think that's why they went and drafted Latu, right? Is they know they need somebody else, another high-level pass rusher, and that's a risky pick. Like, he may turn out to be a really good player, but it's a risky pick for them to take that player, an older guy who's injured and retired already. Like, that's a risky move. And so you better believe that, like, if you're the Colts, you have to believe that he's going to make a significant difference coming off the edge. So, again, I give the edge because I think Latham is a better draft pick for what the Titans were looking for than Latu was for the Colts for what they were looking for, if that makes sense. And so if you're adding those two pieces right now, Latu's on the bench and is a supplemental piece, and the Titans are, dependent on J.C. Latham being very, very good. I think he will be, but there's just no proof yet. And so I think you got to give the edge to the Colts in this one, but not by much. And certainly the long-term prognostication is very different with Skoronski and Latham having the ability to grow into a star tandem on the left side. So, all right. I feel very comfortable with this, and I'm fascinated to see what you have to say. Titans, tight ends and running backs. Spears, Pollard, Chig, and Wiley. Going against E.J. Speed, Zaire Franklin, Julian Blackmon, Nick Cross, and fill in the blank backup safety or whatever. Or we're not counting Nickelback here, so I guess that doesn't count. But I actually think this is one of the better collections of linebackers and safeties. And they're maybe not as good as the Texans, but I think they're pretty good. And I think they win this matchup fairly easily. But I think it doesn't take away from Spears and Pollard. I just think the tight ends are not quite there yet for the Titans. So I give the edge to the Colts here.
Yeah. Ooh, this was tough for me. Because I do think that Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon are a good duo, but they are just very inconsistent. And E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin, I understand why those guys have both kind of stuck around on the team, and they're a good duo, but they're just nothing special. But I do think, and I agree with you, we're talking about matchups, right? I think that Speed and Zaire Franklin do match up pretty well with the. I think they do match up pretty well against this team. Now, what's interesting is that Zaire Franklin is really good. EJ Speed is where I kind of I think is the weak link. I mean, we're talking about a guy who had a pretty high missed tackle rate against Tennessee Titans, and yes, it is with Derrick Henry, but I do think that these other two running backs provide different challenges for these guys. They're nobody has to worry about really getting stiff-armed into oblivion or posterized by Derrick Henry, but it's not for a lack of the ability to be that guy, because both these guys have an ability to stiff-arm.
It's okay for a running back to be a different player than Derrick Henry. It's okay.
Yeah, I just, I think where I struggle is, EJ Speed last year had a real hard time with Tyjae Spears out of the backfield. He allowed Tyjae Spears to go 3 for 4 for 25 yards. Okay, that could be easily exploitable even with Tony Pollard. So EJ Speed's kind of like losing there. They kept Chig contained. The linebackers did 2 for 3 for 14 from Chig to Zaire in the final game, and 1 of 3 for Chig and 6 yards for Speed. So that's a pretty plus matchup for them. It'll be interesting to see what Josh Wiley can do. You know, Julian Blackmon is pretty good, and I guess their other starting safety was Rodney Thomas in those games. He was pretty terrible. So then it comes down to, can Nick Cross stay healthy?
Yeah.
Can these guys? Because if these guys go down, the Tennessee Titans are a little bit deeper. Like if Tyjae Spears goes down, you have Tony Pollard who takes the bulk of it. So you really don't lose anything. These guys, if you got EJ Speed go down, it's Jalen Carley's. If you got Zaire Franklin go down, it's Grant Stewart. If you got Nick Cross that goes down, it's right. Like the depth is better for the Titans on that, but I do agree the starting 4 that we're talking about, the 2 running backs and the 2 tight ends.
Yep.
I don't like it. I'm probably, you say easily. I say this is the least uneasy I feel about giving the Colts a win, but I will give the Colts the win.
I think that's fair. And again, I think so much of the Titans, which is what makes this team, the Titans, so interesting to me just objectively, is like Pollard and Spears. Like we both know that everyone knows what they can do individually. Like we think they're pretty talented. They know how to do things. They're pretty versatile players. But we don't know what it looks like in this offense, in this scheme, with this quarterback and this coach and this play caller. And
I mean, you can say the quarterback, sure, but we know what this is going to look like.
Sure, I just mean we don't have like, and I would say this about Cushenberry and Latham and like just on down the list. Like we just like, does it all hit real fast? And if it does, there's enough pieces for this offense to be pretty salty, pretty fast. Does it take a little bit of time for one guy to get up to speed where the other guy's already there? Like we just so much unknown about the Titans offense. It doesn't mean it's not really appealing and really talented and going to be very interesting. But what exactly does the timeshare look like between Pollard and Spears? Like, is it a 50-50? Is it 60-40? I mean,
I just don't worry about it.
No, I'm not either. I
think it's a good. I'm not saying that you're worried about, but it's like, I think it's a good discussion to have in the summer, you know, as just kind of like a, you know, kind of just, you know, a side topic or something. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody should really care. I don't think it really matters. I don't think it matters if it's Tyjae Spears or Tony Pollard on the field at this time. I do think that the linebackers provide enough athleticism to really kind of neutralize whichever running back it is.
Sure.
But I do think that the way that you beat this linebacking team is by passing the ball to one of those backs, and they both do that very well. They both are exceptional back catchers.
And ultimately, kind of my point is just like there's so much new with the Titans that like we expect like all these different things, like this bullet point list of things that we expect out of all these Tennessee Titans players, coaches, positions, groups, schemes, whatever. And like you just don't always know which one is going to be really, really good and which one's going to be average, which one's going to be great, which one hits real fast, which one takes some time. You just kind of don't always know. And I just find that to be super, super interesting about the Titans. That's sort of a side note altogether. Let's go the other way around. And obviously, this is the same thing that I would say about most of these Colts discussions. You have a very high-end elite player in Jonathan Taylor when healthy. And Evan Hull and Trey Sermon doesn't really do much for me. I think Trey Sermon's whatever. The tight ends are a whole lot of giant question marks. And so if you're telling me Jonathan Taylor is individually in a matchup with anyone on the Titans roster, safety or linebacker, I'm taking Jonathan Taylor 8 out of 10 times to win that matchup, one-on-one. If it's in the hole, if it's in the flat, if it's receiving, if it's running, I don't care. I'm taking Jonathan Taylor to win that matchup. If it's Elijah Molden on a tight end, I'm taking Elijah Molden. If it's on Amani Hooker on a tight end, I'm taking Amani Hooker.
Hell, if it's Jack Gibby, listen, this is the one matchup where I'll say Jack Gibby can cover these tight ends. Like this,
but
this
Taylor
is the one matchup I'm giving. Yeah.
But Taylor gets so many touches when he's on the field that it's almost like you don't.
When he plays against the Tennessee Titans. I mean, that is just factual. Like, that is what's wild to me. It's so wild to me. Even Shane Steichen refused to give Jonathan Taylor touches. I mean, he only got 6 attempts last year.
That's crazy.
6 attempts versus the Tennessee Titans. And let me say something. Maybe it's because he's only had, a couple of good games, but he's got a 3.83 yards per attempt against Tennessee Titans. He has 1 touchdown the entirety that he has played, which has been, let's see, 6 games.
He's only played 6 games. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. He can't stay healthy. So I cannot believe I'm saying this. The Tennessee Titans win this matchup at linebacker and safety, and I don't think we've given them. I think I made them a tie against the Jaguars. I think I tied them against the Jaguars. But I don't think they've gotten a straight out victory. And this is to me, this is easy. I'm taking the linebackers and tight ends, those 4 guys, the 2 linebackers and the 2 linebackers and the 2 safeties, over the 2 tight ends and the 2 running backs. Now, I agree with what you're saying. In a vacuum, if you're to give JT the ball, and he had to go up against Jack Gibby, he is eating Jack Gibby's lunch. But at the end of the day, it's just Jonathan Taylor and a bunch of nobodies. I'm sorry, Jelani Woods, Kyle Granson, Mo Alley Cox, who I've been telling everybody is trash. And then, Trey Sermon, Evan Hull. Like, if Jonathan Taylor goes down, like he is prone to do, good fucking luck. There's no Zach Moss there.
His personal game log against Tennessee is actually quite fascinating. 2020, 7 carries, 12 yards, 2 catches, 25 yards. Okay, so 9 total touches in that game. His next game against the Titans, which was in 2021, he had 10 carries. Now, he averaged 6.5 yards a carry, but he only had 10 carries and 1 reception. That's 11 total touches. So it's like
they lost, which if they would have just kept giving it to – that was the thing that killed me about Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's obviously clearly good.
In the second matchup on Halloween in 2021, he did have 16 carries, 70 yards, 3 catches, 50 yards. So he had 122 yards from scrimmage. They actually gave him the ball 19 times. Good job there. 2022, he had 20 carries, but only 42 yards. Caught 1 pass in that game. In 2022, the second matchup, 10 carries, 7 receptions. So again, 17 touches there, almost 6 yards a carry. So productive. All of these losses so far outside of the 1 win in 2020. And then last year in a win, of course, the only matchup he played, 6 carries, 1 reception, and a total of 34 yards from scrimmage. It's a very interesting usage rate. Now, I know injuries play a role and the game plays a role, but just fascinating. If you give him, 24 touches to 26 touches, I take him over all 4 of the Titans players that are on the field to stop him. But I'm taking the Titans players to win against the tight ends and the backups almost every time.
Yeah.
So very strange.
I think that's
very strange.
Look at it. It is such a strange. He's had such a strange career against Tennessee Titans. You're totally right.
Yeah, it's just weird to look at like that. I hadn't actually looked it up and pulled it up, but to actually see it, it's very, very strange. So, all right. What other any other matchups? I think that just about does it here.
It covers it.
I do think you got any predictions tonight for the Vols? You got any Sinkers Beverages Kingston Group, by the way?
Oh man, Xander Seacrest, but they have Lampkin and Archerbach, I think is his last name.
Yeah, the closer,
something like that.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty ideal matchup for the Texas A&M. But man, I'm gonna go with UT. I'm sticking with my prediction that I made on Friday, which was a 10th inning, bottom of the 10th inning, walk-off home run by the University of Tennessee to win.
Oh my God!
I went deep with my called shot.
Holy smokes, that's some big time stuff. Here's the thing though, the tension, as I said at the beginning of the show. By the way, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, 2 great sponsors. Make sure you check them out. Lower Broad Hockey for you Preds fans. Make sure you check out the Substack. Go check it out. Tennessee and these are 2 elite baseball programs, elite teams. You've got. I thought the tension in Sunday's match and Sunday's game was phenomenal. The A&M has outplayed this team both days. The Tennessee bats have been cold. That's got to come to life, but you got 2 great pitchers on the mound. It has been nothing but really good. Texas A&M played a really great game, pressuring the defense on Saturday. Tennessee couldn't field the ball, some errors and some mistakes, couldn't get runners over with hitting with runners in scoring position. Like Vitello has to do, like Jim Schlossnagle is one of the best coaches ever. And he's trying to set his legacy here. Tony Vitello needs to prove that he is that level of a coach. And I don't know what that means tonight, but he's got to prove it. And it means the team needs to wake up at the plate, because like Billy Amick is just like sitting up there flailing. Like your 3-hole hitter is just flailing yesterday on the mounds. I think it's going to be super close. I think it's like 4-3 or 6-5. Like I think it's very close. I think it's very dramatic. And I'm not making a pick because I have no clue what's going to happen. But I think it is a very close game.
UT's going to win. It needs to be.
You already dropped those stats.
The Texas A&M has to get up, to a big lead, and they can do it. It's not impossible that they. I mean, their bats have been pretty consistent. I would say that probably there was a couple swings that they normally they like to take the walks. Right, they like to generate walks, get on base, and everything, and they didn't do a really good job of that yesterday. So
they walked. No, they walked like crazy.
No, there was a guys in crucial moments, Braden, that decided to chase the ball. Yeah, decided to chase the ball and struck out when they could have taken the walk. So there were a couple of guys on Texas A&M to do that.
Oh,
so
okay. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that you got them, if they stay more disciplined and play their style of game, I think that you'll see that the Texas A&M could end up scoring a lot at the beginning. They got to get Xander Sechrest out of a rhythm early, because if he's a rhythm pitcher, if he gets into the rhythm, it's gonna be tough.
I think there's gonna be so many puckered assholes on both sides in the first 3 innings. I think it's like 0-0 with like 2 errors. I just think people are going to be tight. It's going to be very tight the first couple of innings. Maybe it starts to kind of find a rhythm, and maybe both pitchers find a rhythm. Here's the other thing that they did not talk about enough on the broadcast, because they took out Christian Moore in the bottom of the 9th for defensive purposes. The hamstring is clearly bothering him, and what that kind of Texas A&M's now getting a little bit healthier. The question is whether or not Christian Moore is fully healthy to be the full-on Christian Moore, because if he is, this is the game. This is the game that he's supposed to deliver in. This is why you play the game. Like, this is it right here. It's going to be great. I think it's going to be awesome. My wife and I won't be sitting down. And yes, puckered the entire night. That is absolutely for sure. Can't wait to watch it with my kids, though. Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. BuildKG.com is the website for the Kingston Group. Make sure you know that name. The Kingston Group. Make sure you know that name. That's right. Look, Bo, Jason Isbell's a great song to have stuck in your head. Great artist to have stuck in your head. Just let your eyes adjust. You'll be all right. Sinkers Beverages, sign up for the in-crowd. If you go to Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, sign up for the Bob program. Those, let me try again. Loyalty rewards programs are excellent programs to be a part of. They will pay off. And of course, they track all your purchases, and they know exactly what you like. And they'll tell you when good stuff is happening. They'll tell you when stuff is coming. So make sure you sign up for both of those programs and follow them on the socials as well. StackingTheInbox.com is the website for you Titans fans to get all premium content from Zach Lyons. And if you are a Predators fan, Lower Broad Hockey, of course, over on Substack, sign up. We got all kinds of premium stuff coming for you. The draft is this week, and we're covering that, and free agency next week, all over there at Lower Broad Hockey. We're going to have 3 or 4 writers for you guys, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's nobody in the market that's doing this right now, covering the Preds the best, the way we're going to do it. So come check it out and come hang out. We do appreciate you guys. Zach, anything else? You got F-words coming up this week. What else you got for the folks?
There you go.
That's it. All right. There you go. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to all of you folks in the comments. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. We really appreciate you guys. We will be back on Thursday. Easy for me to say here on A Football Show. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great week, everybody.